Christine Blasey Ford says she is terrified to be testifying, but says she believes it is her civic duty to come forward and speak. And really, the stakes in this hearing could not be higher. If the legislation gets out of the House, it is essentially dead on arrival in the Republican-controlled Senate. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said last month it is not going anywhere in the upper chamber. Digging a little deeper into the data, while Mark Harris dominated in the Republican suburbs of Union County, it's over in Mecklenburg County, the Charlotte suburbs, where Dan McCready just could not make up the difference. Jones began to publicly express regret for his vote to go to war, and perhaps nothing is more emblematic of that feeling than these photographs lining the wall outside of his Capitol Hill office. Each of these pictures, that of a fallen service member from eastern North Carolina or Camp Lejeune. Hello again from Havana. The deals signed today are by no means official trade agreements. The embargo prevents that, but Louisiana leaders say they are a step in the right direction. After all the pomp and circumstance is over, some Louisiana students may choose to pack their bags, load the car, and head out of state, maybe for a new job. Just to give you a better sense of the power of the storm surge, this trailer here was originally parked way over there in front of the store before the storm began. It was supposed to serve as a sort of buffer against the winds. Here at Nags Head, the winds continue to pound the coastline, the rain growing more intense. But really, at this point, because we are so far north of the eye and the track of the hurricane continues to track a little bit more south, the concern here is really flooding. I am live right now amongst a scary pack of tigers. We are live along the parade route right now. We're, of course, a little less than an hour away from kickoff time, and I'm here with Peggy. You are in charge of this float, so why the tiger theme? That does it for us in Mamou. Have a good Mardi Gras, everybody. I'm going to go try some dancing. Let's see how this turns out. Well, Tim, as a general rule, Democrats just do not like this. The Republicans are more of an interesting story because there is kind of some internal division when it comes to them. You have on the one extreme Congressman Mark Meadows, who basically said in a tweet this evening that this emergency declaration is legal and well-founded. He's, of course, a very close Trump ally here on Capitol Hill. On the other end, there was a pretty scathing statement from Senator Tom Tillis today, who really expressed some concern about the precedent this might be setting, that Democrats could come along later and perhaps use emergency declarations for their own benefit for issues they care about. He wrote in that statement saying, while I agree with President Trump's policy goal, I do not believe in situational principles, and it's clear what kind of rabbit hole our country can go down when we have a Democratic president who wants more government intrusion into our economy and our lives. Now, another person who has expressed concern about possible precedent to me was Congressman Mark Walker. So I asked him today when I sat down to interview him, I'm like, okay, so what do you think of going forward with this emergency declaration? Are you concerned about this? We know that Democrats in the House are already talking about the possibility of trying to upend this, of basically reversing it. I asked him, would you go along with that? And he said no. He further explained here.
I think the president is...
And we should specify, when he says MILCON, he means military construction, which is one of the things spelled out in this emergency declaration as a potential source of money for the border wall. And that has raised some concerns from North Carolina Governor, Congressman Richard Hudson, and others about where this money could come from. Could it impact projects at military bases across North Carolina? Tim?
There's no evidence that we've seen.
Senator Tom Tillis defiant and standing behind the embattled Supreme Court nominee.
He was extremely patient with unfair questions being cut off, but he maintained his poise.
For hours Thursday, Tillis and other lawmakers took turns going behind closed doors to read the results of an FBI investigation into allegations against Judge Brett Kavanaugh. The Supreme Court pick is accused of sexual misconduct by a handful of women. Republicans say the new round of investigations proved nothing.
No corroboration of any allegation that's been made, not any corroboration.
Democrats say that's because the investigation was insufficient. Lawyers for Kavanaugh accuser Christine Blasey Ford say the FBI did not interview her or a list of people they say could have helped corroborate her story.
It was never designed to get to the truth. It was never designed to get to the bottom of it.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to a handful of moderate lawmakers. Will they vote to confirm him? At least two have already given what could be considered a hint, saying that they found the FBI investigation to be thorough.
We believe Christine Ford.
With tensions flaring and the world watching, lawmakers now prepare for a make-or-break few days, with a key procedural vote slated for Friday and a possible confirmation vote this weekend. In Washington, Kevin Frey, Spectrum News.
Mr. President, we're going to back you up.
The call came in the waning hours of the budget debate. Congressman Mark Meadows on the House floor asking the president to turn down a budget plan adopted by the Senate. His reasoning? The plan did not include money for the president's long-promised border wall.
If not now, when? I mean, the question is the landscape doesn't get any better for Republicans.
Meadows is known for having the president's ear. He is the leader of the conservative House Freedom Caucus, which frequently bucked Republican House leadership, including during previous fights over immigration. He also was briefly a candidate for the White House Chief of Staff job. The president did eventually derail the Senate-backed plan that Meadows was railing against, saying it was a no-go without $5 billion in wall funding. Democrats and some Senate Republicans balked.
The Senate passed a bill. They passed that bill on the understanding that the President of the United States would sign that bill.
Democrats take control of the House this Thursday. It's then they plan to pass funding legislation to reopen the government. Not included, however, is money for the president's wall. Meadows continues to weigh in on negotiations. In a tweet Monday, he called that Democratic proposal a non-starter and not a legitimate answer to this impasse. How long until a compromise is reached? That remains anyone's guess. On Capitol Hill, Kevin Frey, Spectrum News. Not just one, but two homes, the other across the street, flattened by the brute force of Florence. In some cases, that storm surge around here reaching several feet. Now, we have already seen the impact across this area, and really two different stories are playing out. In some cases, folks already looking to the cleanup process, looking to rebuild. In other cases, like those here, folks have no place to call home. Everywhere you look, Florence left its mark. Boats dumped on dry land, river water washed into homes.
We've sprayed several times with an anti-mold agent.
In some cases, they are already starting the gutting out process, removing the floor and walls. Many count themselves as lucky, saying it could have been worse.
Everything we sell is just stuff that we can replace. It's luxury items.
At the Franklin Antique Mall, they're clearing everything out, separating what can be kept from what needs to be tossed.
We got people here that we don't know who they are helping out today because they want us to be successful.
Just to give you a better sense of the power of the storm surge, this trailer here was originally parked way over there in front of the store before the storm began. It was supposed to serve as a sort of buffer against the winds. The governor, who surveyed the damage in New Bern Monday, says the recovery process will last months, possibly even years.
Our infrastructure, we've got to help businesses get back on their feet, and we've got to help people.
But while some are able to rebuild their homes, others have no home to go back to. The storm surge flattening whole buildings in one neighborhood, a place where people just do not have the money to rebuild.
For these people that live here, they're really out of options right now, and that's unfortunate, and they're going to need help. They really are. Back in this community now, this is a sign that is sitting right next to one of these flattened homes. It reads, "Yes, we need help. God bless America." And so that begs the question, what happens to these families now? Who will help them?
There you go.
With a hammer and some elbow grease,
All this is mortars and tenons.
Theodric Givens can match wits with any carpenter. His latest project, a dining room table set for a couple who flooded last August.
They came, they wanted to buy, but they didn't really have the funds. So I turned around and told them, I said, well, look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a dinette set.
But unlike most living in the Baton Rouge area, Givens never saw those floodwaters firsthand.
I've been confined 41 years, 7 months, and 1 day.
Convicted of second-degree murder in New Orleans in 1976, he's now in his 60s. He has so far spent 2/3 of his life at Angola prison.
I done lost all my hair. Oh, look at that. I don't have no hair on top of my head.
During those decades, Givens learned to trade, rebuilding his life one project at a time.
I look at where I come from, and I know I'm still not where I would like to be. But I'm satisfied at the progress. I'm happy with me.
Sentenced to life, he was destined to live the rest of his years behind bars. But as of just a few weeks ago, he now has a chance at freedom.
We have the district attorneys on board. We have the sheriffs on board.
Earlier this year, in a rare moment of bipartisanship, state lawmakers approved 10 bills overhauling Louisiana's criminal justice system. Part of that reform, a chance at parole for about 130 lifers convicted in the 1970s, including Givens. When they were first sentenced, they were promised a shot at parole, but a technicality in the law prevented them from acting on it. Now they'll get that chance.
This is not an automatic release. This has to go through a process, and the victims and the DAs, everybody will have their say-so.